What's up, amigos? Commander Jaime here today, and we're going to cover over a Himiko Yggdrasil standard deck profile that actually got second in a couple weeks ago in early December for Vision's tournament. The player KuuroNeko piloted this deck, so kudos to you, amigo, for topping a couple weeks ago. I've been wanting to cover this, but CFE Plus took a little bit of a while to actually have the promo on here, so I wanted to do it justice, and that's why I waited so long. And here it is. So let's start diving into it. So for the winning image for this deck, it honestly uses Himiko as your main Vanguard, and with the ability that she has, Soul Blast 5, put a critical trigger or a draw trigger to the bottom of the deck, and then for each of those grades that your opponent is on as main Vanguard. So for example, if they're grade 2, it triggers that many times. So if they're a grade 2, it triggers twice. If they're a grade 3, it triggers 3 times. So if you did a crit trigger, then you can actually just apply the crit trigger to any of your units. You could split it apart, or you could stack it onto one unit and really go for those like high critical plays that one hit from one unit can really mean instant death. And so that's really what the deck from the main Vanguard perspective focuses on. And so if we have that pressure, how can we make that much more threatening? And so what this deck utilizes is both Yggdrasil and Norn for the Regalia support that we have recently. Just to cover Yggdrasil real quick, and so all of your units with the Divine Gauge, they get the boost ability, which actually matters. So your grade 2 Regalias or grade 3 Regalias can actually boost if they do have the Divine Gauge. And of course, if this is on the Vanguard circle, your opponent can those riggers cannot be affected at all by your opponent's card, which is great in certain matchups. If you want to keep your regards in that perspective, but you want to ride Himiko as the main Vanguard. So the reason why Yggdrasil is so imperative is that her second skill is that the Regard Circle or Vanguard Circle, once per turn, Counter Blast 1, search your deck up to a Regalia of Fate Norn and call it to Regard Circle. And then of course you can also choose up to 2 of your Regards and put up to 1 card from Soul and put them down as a Divine Gauge for each of those units. That is important because it searches for Norn. Now, what does Norn do? Norn has the amazing ability, with the second skill being the amazing one. A Regard Circle once per turn. At the end of the battle, this unit boosted a Regalia in its card name. You can discard 1 card and then also give up one of your Divine Gauges. Restand the you boosted unit and give it plus 10k and minus drive check 1. So this makes anything with Regalia a restander. And right now in Standard, we have Yggdrasil and Norn. So they're the only Regalias right now in Standard that you can actually pair up together. And what's really cool is that because you're stacking the triggers on Yggdrasil, for example, ideally, with Himiko's skill, Norn also just gives it power on top of that. And so you have very 2 powerful attacks where Norn is a 10k booster in a sense. So with the triggers, let's say your opponent's a grade 2, right? So your triggers were triggered twice. So you apply 2 crits onto the Yggdrasil. She becomes critical 3. And then of course with boosted, it becomes a 43k line at that point. And then when it restands it, it gives a plus 10k. So it's 43 again when it swings. However, with Himiko, when you ride your Vanguard, you want to use the Force to gift. So you get an additional crit on top of that. So that column is swinging 4 crit while your opponent's a grade 2. Very, very deadly if they're not ready for that. Very hard to guard too. And honestly, if you're already 43k, you pass the line of a 30k Sentinel crit card, and so they have to drop at least 2 cards to really make it like stop. When they're at grade 3, then you get another crit on top of that, and of course another 10k, making it even more threatening. And so depending on the matchup, you want to kill your opponent at grade 2 if possible. But if it goes to the grade 3 turns, then you want to make sure that you put yourself in a winning position, because some decks can just pop off as soon as they ride to grade 3. A good example is Gurgurit, so watch out for that. And so with that being the winning image together, these 3 cards are really the cohesive unit that goes together on doing that turn. And so all the other cards in this build just help the consistency of it, or add a high roll aspect on top of it, where you get additional triggers and potentially even more crits. So you can actually have the chance to take an opponent from 0 damage to 6 damage if it comes to that. And so some of the cards that help with that is over here with Promethean, so Dancing Lights. He has an ability when he's placed, you can check the top 2 cards, add 1 into the soul, and then put the 1 on top of your deck. So it's really a better form of revelation back in G era, where Fenrir changed it to a really good form of revelation. You look at the top 2 cards and you put 1 into soul, and really you're soul charging key pieces. In this case, you're soul charging potentially crits, or you're stacking the crits on top. So either way is really good. You want to make sure you have at least 1 critical trigger with Himiko. So that way when you soul blast it, you have that critical trigger in the soul. So you can actually use the skill. When you don't have the critical trigger, Himiko becomes bland Vanguard. Like, it doesn't do anything. So you want to be in that good position to be able to do it. And what's a neat trick too is that, you know, once you do the skills and everything, right before you start your battle phase, you can call Prometheus, check the top 2, and kind of stack your drive checks in that fashion too. So that's where you get the additional crit pressure potentially from as well. To further help with that, there is a grade 1 promo, just like I mentioned. This is the White Brush Witch Arctic, so it has the exact same skill as a grade 1 though. And so having additional skills like that really just makes this deck a lot more threatening and more consistent at that point. So he plays 3 of that. With that, now the aspect is like, what's left? Well, we need soul because we soul blast 5. So a lot of the other cards are really soul charges. So we have in the grade 2 again, we have Ulysses, for example. At the end of the battle, this unit attack the Vanguard, put this into your soul, draw a card, and soul charge 1. That is really good. It's a free soul charge 2, put in some unit on the board, dishing out some pressure, and then returning advantage back. Genesis needs that because we can't really generate advantage or hand advantage just out of the blue. So cards like Ulysses, where you can just commit something, soul charge, and get something back, very appreciative. So that's why he plays 4 of that. Further along with the grade 1s now, we have Haiti. This is a new unit. So the main aspect that you use is the when play soul charge 2. So again, you're soul charging. And then if you, during your turn, if you soul blast it for this turn for a cost of ability, then this unit gets plus 5k. So it becomes a 13k booster, which can make better numbers with behind your Vanguard or the other rearguard column that you have. So just to make it things easier. Not only that, we have Skull, which does a similar purpose, where again, if units were so blasted, gets plus 5 for the 5k for the turn, so you have that 13k booster attacker. But it has the consistency of grabbing your grade 3s, and either grade 3 is great. So you want Himiko for the actual main Vanguard, so that way it helps with that consistency to ride up, and then you have Himiko where you can just have it in hand. So that way you can just pop it and actually search for the Norn if you don't have it, or you can have Norn just already from hand and just be good to go. So this helps with the consistency as well. And then of course your deck thinning, right? So it helps you get the chances to see more crit triggers at that point. Lastly, we have this grade 1 called Astria of the Full Heavens. This card is really useful in the little ways that you wouldn't expect. So its skill, when it's placed, draw a card, and if you do, put a card into the bottom of the deck, and then if this unit's in Vanguard circle, you additionally soul charge 2 cards. Now it does a filtering effect, and so if you have cards that are not useful in your hand, you can bottom deck them, so that way you can improve the quality of your hand. If this was in your Vanguard circle, it's another card to help soul charge 2, because we have Haiti that soul charges 2 when it's placed either circle. Ashia is another unit that you can just ride and soul charge 2. And then the second ability, I'm not sure if this is used often enough, but at the end of the battle that it's boosted, soul blast 2 and return this unit back to your hand. So you can reuse Astria. In Premium, this was a way to trigger Taro, for example, to restand other units, but in Standard, you don't have that interaction, so really it's just like soul blast 2, get a card back. And have that 10k shield being useful there. So any advantage helps with that. And so that's why he's only playing with 2 cards, where the majority of the other cards just help with the winning image as a whole, really. And so finally, the triggers. As you can see, he is playing 12 crit and 4 heal, and of course the V-starter. Now, I had asked him, like, did he miss the PG draw? Because a lot of Himiko players appreciate the draw triggers, and I've been in both sides of the perspective, where it's like, man, it would be really nice to draw some advantage so I could actually survive and dish out some field and kind of go from there, especially in Standard. Premium's a little different, but with Standard you want that advantage if possible. But if the goal of this deck, like KuuroNeko had explained to me, is for you to really crit them to instant death, especially if it's a deck that you could just punish while they're at grade 2, why not have as many critical triggers to be able to soul charge them, and also your drive checks just become more deadly, because at the end of the day, if you win that turn, your hand size doesn't matter. Right? And I was like, fair point, right? Good argument and everything. And what he's also mentioned is that because it's a 30k shield Sentinel critical trigger. It was very nice to drop one card instead of 2 cards for a PG. So that really helped in that aspect. And so a lot of this deck is honestly very fun in that aspect. It's very simple to use. It's one of the few decks in Vanguard that I say that it's a very simple deck, but yet very effective in the metagame. His strategy did not change for the majority of his matchups, which is cool if you really think about it. You want to have a solid strategy going into a tournament, and if you don't have to variant it or change it up to so many matchups, the better, because you're doing repetition, the same thing over and over again. And as long as you do it over and over again and you're really good at it, you're gonna more likely win those matchups even more, right? And so this deck just has that nice, like, I'm just gonna stack crits on Yggdrasil. I could split them across. He even told me that you can have 2 Yggdrasils with 2 norms behind, so you have 2 restanding columns, so you can have 5 attacks with crit pressure. It can get real nasty with this deck, and it really has that pressure where it's like, I'm just going to swing high crit and put you to 6 and game over. And so the last thing I'll say, and some of the takeaways he said, is that in one of his matchups, he got second place because he felt like of a misplay. He faced the Gurgrid deck in the top, and he gave that player 1 counterblast before the grade 3 ride. And Gurgrid is one of those decks that just need 1 counterblast to really pop off, especially if they have the Percival, for example. It really just gets them into the high gear of Excel, circle generation, and pressure, where Genesis doesn't have that hand advantage to just keep up or take on and then still do an effective turn. Not only that, he really realized that as long as he would have kept them at 0, he could have 6 damage him in 1 turn, and that's one of the tactics that we've seen in Premium, and so it's kind of cool just to see that in Standard too. So that's one of his takeaways, that, you know, if I were to learn from this, it would be, don't give Gurgrid 1 Crown Bless until I'm for sure I'm good, you know. And that's with any deck that can pop up, for example. And he actually got this deck from 2 channels, 2 sources of media. One of them is DPP Channel and also ohtae. I will provide the links to the description so you can check out those channels. Those are the people that on social media he saw where this deck is fun. Why not try it out? It looks, you know, stupid fun. And he really got far with it. And I think this deck actually has that good power potential to do well in most tournaments, where other decks, they're doing their own winning image, but this one is very like, I'm just going to one-shot you. And if I don't, then I lose. But if I did, then I just won. So it's just a really cool deck. It's budget-friendly compared to some of the other top-tier decks. So if you're looking for a more affordable deck, I think this one would be worth trying out, especially, you know, if you have CFA. Play test it, see if you like it at that point. Otherwise, you'll just look into the next deck, right? So with that, amigos, again, if you want to see the more in-depth interview article that I did with KuuroNeko, it's also in the description in Access Vanguard's blog. And so that way, with that, you guys have a happy new year. I'm looking forward to doing more videos in 2021. Like the video if you liked it. Comment down below for any feedback. I appreciate your feedback. Share with a friend and subscribe. See you, amigos. Ciao.